Hi, I just finished reading this book. You'll see it when you believe it, which I guess is an early self help book. I'm not sure when it was published. It's by Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, who evidently was one of these sort of Napoleon Hill type characters, one of these early, how to improve your life characters. A lot of interesting concepts in this book. Um, Oneness is one of the things he talks about. Thoughts, forgiveness, abundance, a whole lot of different concepts, and I like it. I'd give it maybe someone. I'd give it maybe 6 out of 10. One being rubbish, five being average, and I think most average books are quite good. So I'd give it about 6 out of 10. The way to your personal transformation, he calls this, um, and some of the concepts he talks about in here. Forgiveness is a very important one. He practices. Let me just go through the chapters as they are. Um, so here we go. Starting transformation um, is basically the concept. He calls it a willingness to live beyond your form. What he means by that is that we are actually, our bodies are temporary. So how can I explain this? He says, imagine that you are not a body with a soul, but you are a soul with a body. Couple of advantages to thinking like this: if you can do it, you get over your physical appearance. You don't worry so much about, oh no, I've got some white hairs, oh no, I've got some wrinkles or whatever, oh no, I'm getting a bit fat. You stop caring about that. It doesn't necessarily mean you absolutely let yourself go, but it doesn't bother you because you realize that this whole form is just temporary. Also, he says one of the big advantages of that is that you no longer fear death, and also bereavement is easier to deal with because you realize that the person is still there apparently, because their soul is there, but their body is gone. They've moved on to something else. So that was the nice bit about the first one, transformation. And then he also talks about actually when we're alive, it's just a different version of a dream, right? Um, because when you're dreaming, there's no such thing as time. There's, one day you might be in a dream, 1 second a baby, and then the next second 100 years old. And he says that is actually a form of existence as well. It's quite, I guess it kind of gets metaphysical, but it's certainly an interesting read. It's certainly an interesting concept. The second one, thought. Everything before it exists is initially a thought. Anything which now exists, somebody thought about. Okay, this might not apply to natural disasters or weather patterns or whatever, but part of the whole thing about dying whilst you're alive, he calls it, which is when you wake up, the part of you that was dreaming dies, and the only way you can be free is to die whilst you're alive. He tells a story of a bird who was in a cage and played dead one day. So the guy opened the cage. It's something like this. There's another really nice story in here he gives, which is the concept of going out to the supermarket and buying a broccoli with a beautiful picture of broccoli on it, coming home, taking off the wrapper, throwing the broccoli in the bin, and eating the wrapper. He said that's the sort of illustration of how silly it is to only care about appearance, because all the good stuff, all the nutrition was in the broccoli which you threw in the bin. But if all you care about is appearance, then it's akin to just eating the wrapper. Um, Detachment, being detached from your possessions, and this leads into, he's got this idea of the more you give away, the more you will receive. He talks a lot about the universe being perfect as well, and everything happening for a reason. All these concepts that you've probably heard about a lot, but I think this may be one of the books that was the first to put them forward. This guy used to be a working in college, was a professor after he was in the Navy, and then he says, I never ever pursued more money, I just pursued more freedom. How would I have less hours at work? Yeah. And more time to spend on my writing. And then he went on a writing tour and he made more money than he's ever made before. It, it seems a little bit, he quotes the Bible a lot, he quotes, Hindu scriptures a lot. It may seem a bit airy fairy, but it's certainly an interesting way of thinking about things. Forgiveness, he says, is very, very important. Um, Synchronicity, the universe works perfectly. There's nothing. He talks about all these things that happen, and he says if I hadn't picked up those flowers, and if I hadn't done this, and if I hadn't decided to do that, and if everything happens for a reason, I wouldn't have met this old lady who I gave a lift to, who admitted later that she was going to kill herself, and because I gave her a lift and gave her flowers. And interesting read. Did it really, really move me? It gave me an interesting few concepts to think about. And certainly I think some of them are good concepts. It talks about abundance as well, there's enough of everything, and etc., etc., and everything is perfect. It's kind of Pollyanna, but I did enjoy it. I'm not trying to be dismissive of it. Um, I I do believe that everything does start with your thoughts. Yeah, let's say somebody gives you a box of chocolates, assuming everybody likes chocolates. If you think, oh, this is great, well, it's a box of chocolates and it's great. But if you're one of these people who thinks everything is wrong, then what you'll do is you deliberately pick the chocolate you don't like, and then you complain that it's going to make you fat, or give you diabetes or whatever. But it's the same thing. It's a box of chocolates. So I guess the easiest way to change your experience of life and change your mood and everything is to change the way you think about things. So I think forgiveness, yeah, probably a good idea if you can manage it. Detachment, not being attached to anything. If you're, he says, imagine you had, I don't know if he said it like this, but the concept is, imagine if you had all your money and all your possessions on the table in front of you, and then you close your eyes and you can't see them anymore. Are you suddenly any less happy? Seems a bit silly. No, I'm not any less happy because I know it's still mine, but don't be too attached to things. Be detached, and you live happily, you live more freely. Um, which I guess makes sense because have I talked about, or have I don't know if any of these book reviews I've talked about, but once you realize there's more to life than money, life becomes a lot nicer and a lot easier and actually a lot more rewarding. Um, anyway, rather than rant on, I'm going to say, is the book worth reading? Yeah, it's worth reading. Some people might enjoy it more than I did, but it's certainly not a terrible book. Um, and maybe because I like things which are both on the mental side, try and think like this, try and think like this, and then take some action. Whereas this seems all a bit too happy. So maybe it's just my refusal to accept them. I don't know. Read it and make up your own mind. But yeah, he's successful. He's obviously, sold a lot of books. I don't know if he was alive anymore. I'd never heard of him before reading this. And this was actually sent to me by somebody, so thank you. Practicing, passing on, not being detached, passing your things on, sharing everything as is suggested in this book. But I did enjoy it. It's okay. I won't tell you not to read it, but it certainly won't be at the top of my recommendations. So that's You'll See It When You Believe It by Wayne W. Dyer. There you go.